Hi, I'm Jim McCarter. I'm a scientist, doctor, and an athlete. I'm a professor of genetics and a biotech entrepreneur. When I tell friends that I've given up sugar and starch and get 80% of my calories from fat, the first question I get is, why? My journey began Thanksgiving of 2012 with a question from my sister. This is my family. That's my sister next to me on the right in the back. And I'd spent a decade running a biotech company that was acquired. And I joined a venture capital group of a crop protection company. And my sister said to me, you know, some of that corn that you're growing goes into high fructose corn syrup. And why is that a good thing? And this got me reading more about corn syrup. And while I found that it's no worse than sugar, the more I learned about the health effects of sugar, the more concerned that I became. The 150 pounds of sugar that the average American consumes annually, as well as starch converted to sugar, isn't just empty calories. It has a negative effect. And you know, I used to eat toast, jelly, and banana for breakfast. That's 75 grams of carbs that spiked my blood sugar, which spiked my insulin, which then crashed my blood sugar and made me hungry again. It also blocked energy from body fat, since insulin stops fat mobilization. And as I've looked at this more, I've become increasingly convinced that this carbohydrate overloading is behind many of the diseases of civilization. As this cartoon says, that high-carb diet you put me on 20 years ago, that I put you on 20 years ago, gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Oops. So in 2013, I began reducing my carbs and tracking along the way. Last year, I went further, adopting nutritional ketosis, where most of my calories come from fat, and that's the story I'll share today. So let's focus on ketones, which are one of the things that I track. Ketone bodies are natural metabolites that we all have in our blood, usually at low levels. They derive from fat metabolism and rise when fat is the primary fuel, either from food or from body fat. And they're an alternative to glucose. And when you're fasting, they actually provide 60% of the brain's energy. They're also a clean burning fuel that reduces oxidative stress. And there are well-documented benefits to ketosis. Clinical trials show that blood pressure drops, blood triglycerides decline, HDL rises, which are all good things. And hunger also diminishes from fat loss. And so what I'll take you through now are some of the challenges and as well as the benefits that I've seen with restriction of carbohydrates and entering ketosis. To tap fat as fuel, I've driven my insulin levels down by restricting carbohydrates. So rather than getting 350 grams a day from carbohydrates, I'm getting about 20 grams a day. I avoid sweets, grains, and fruit, and I moderate my protein intake to about 120 grams a day because too much protein can cause rising glucose by gluconeogenesis. So I also log my meals, and I'll show you some examples. And one of the things I've learned from these meals is that there's too much protein in these examples that you'll see. So in the upper left, that filet mignon, 8-ounce filet mignon has 60 grams of protein. Add eggs and cheese and nuts, and that's enough to block ketosis for the day. So the solution to this is to find sources of fat that doesn't come along with protein, things like coconut oil and butter and olive oil. But unfortunately, we've been told for a generation that these fats are dangerous. But recent analyses show that there's no association between saturated fat and disease. Now, what I do to measure this is that twice a day, I take a blood prick, finger prick, and I measure beta-hydroxybutyrate. Typically, people see 0.1 millimolar or less if you're having a fairly high carbohydrate diet. But I'm about tenfold that level, so I see 1 millimolar at night in red and 2 millimolar in the morning in blue. And I find that this immediate feedback, daily feedback, is very helpful because it's often hard to know the nutrient content of a meal. So let's go through some of the benefits of ketosis that I've seen. I'm 25 pounds lighter than at my heaviest. I've lost half my body fat. I'm at 12% by DEXA. I no longer get tired or hungry after meals, and I can sustain long stretches of concentration. The athletic stamina of sustained, intense workouts is extraordinary. So for instance, a trail run that I did, I was limited not by my cardiovascular, but by the footing on the trail. I've also seen decreases in inflammation, and ketogenic diets are known to be anti-inflammatory, so that joint pain is gone, and I verified this with a low level of C-reactive protein. One of the best benefits I've seen is that my blood pressure is way down. So prior to limiting carbs, it was as high as 136/90. My average at recent physicals has been 112/72, and I've also been measuring this for 2 months with a Scanadu, and I'm at 113/71. And lastly, as expected, my triglycerides have dropped substantially. and my HDL cholesterol, the so-called good cholesterol, has risen. So let's move on to some of the challenges. My LDL cholesterol has risen, but while LDL is called bad cholesterol, these carriers are actually not one class, but a range from large buoyant and benign to atherogenic small dense particles. And carb restriction shifts LDL from small dense to large buoyant, and this is what I see in my NMR lipoprofile. My LDL particles are benign, large, buoyant. So other challenges have been muscle cramps, slow workout warm-ups, and cold sensitivity. I knew that cramps could be an issue because insulin signals the kidneys to retain salt. When insulin levels drop, the kidneys release salt and water follows. I've been using cramping as an indicator of this electrolyte imbalance. I would get a calf cramp and I'd have a bouillon cube. But what I eventually realized is that these cramps are actually a late indicator, and for me, cold sensitivity and soreness early in a workout are more sensitive symptoms. So there's a scene in the movie Avengers, the recent Avengers movie, where the AI program Jarvis is under attack from Ultron. As Stark and Banner watch, Ultron, the fluid blue hologram, attacks Jarvis in gold, piercing its core. And this is how I felt this spring swimming. The water's freezing, and I know what's coming. The cold will begin at my fingers and creep toward my core. But this time I feel warm, like I'm wearing a wetsuit. And the reason is simple. It's the salt that I took before the workout. Getting enough sodium, 5 grams a day or so, has been the solution to the remaining issues that I've had with ketosis. But is this much salt safe? The recommended daily allowance for sodium is only 2.3 grams. However, a 2014 study found that the lowest cardiovascular risk actually occurs with much higher, 4 to 6 grams of sodium a day, which is right where I'm aiming. So in conclusion, I've learned that the benefits of ketosis for me are substantial, and they make me want to continue. Getting rid of sugar was the easy part. More challenging has been moderating protein and getting enough fat and salt, and that requires contradicting conventional wisdom about nutrition. Lastly, it's been a fun challenge, and this is a work in progress.